most dogs are really sweet. So why do you hear people say with venom, I hate little dogs? At least I've heard this probably 4 times this month. But most little dogs are actually sweet. So why, again, do people have this belief? Or do people repeat this? It's a great way to illustrate several psychological principles that are extremely prudent, that really can show us where people's beliefs come from. One, being aware of them in ourselves can help us to be more accurate and also just to understand better the world and understand people around us. So, first of all, with I hate little dogs, is repetition in 2 ways. First of all, when something is repeated over and over, our brain will think it's true. Our brain does not understand statistics whatsoever, unless we're conscious of it. At least most people's brains, right? Like statistics, oh, there's a 1 in a million chance of this happening. Doesn't really matter. If we see something on the news, right? Let's say there's a certain event that, happens maybe once a month, 3 times a month in the United States, where there's 400 million people. But every time it happens, it's covered on the news. That sort of event, and I'm not saying any particular event, you could insert like 50 different events into this example, but our brain will think that's common. There's so many things that people talk about all the time that as being very dangerous or very important or pressing issues. But if we just think, what's really dangerous? It's cars. It's cars. It's crossing the street. It's unsafe drivers. And it's so crazy, right? Because we have all these controversies and different sides of different views, different issues, and what people think is dangerous and what we should do, and people arguing. But basically, everyone can agree, hey, if someone's a foolish driver and they've got 10 tickets, sorry, you can't drive anymore. And policies like that, enforcing safe driving, being more careful around cars, because statistically that's what is dangerous, would save more lives, more people, prevent more tragedy, more heartbreak than just about anything else. Not to go off topic too much, but it just illustrates how our minds work. If we're hearing something said over and over, this is dangerous, our mind will believe it. So just the fact that people sometimes talk about not liking little dogs, like, oh, I hate little dogs, or I only like big dogs, the more that's repeated, the more that's going to be repeated, and the more it's going to be believed. Now, the next thing with that is our brains have bias. We're going to remember outlier events, but even more, when we have a belief, it's going to color what we remember. So for this reason, beliefs are incredibly important. So I want this to be not just educational, but also practical. So on the bad side, the I hate little dogs example, people say, I hate little dogs. And, little dogs are always barking and they're aggressive. So what happens is, whenever there is a little dog that yaps at them or snaps at them, it's so remembered. And that is little dogs. That's how little dogs are. But if you think back, like myself, I live in a big city where most of the dogs are little. I would say I pass like 15 dogs a day, 20 dogs a day, probably more, but that I'm close to, or even like they sniff me. And maybe like once a week, I'll have a dog yap at me and bark at me. And that's pretty rare, right? It's like maybe 10% of the time a little dog is barking in an annoying way, maybe 5%. So, but if I had that belief, like I hate little dogs, that's what my brain's going to remember. Because first of all, having that perception, it's almost like creating a puzzle. Like we have this puzzle, which is our worldview, and then the events fit in like pieces, and they're just going to stick right in. And additionally, is just that's an outlier. It's more intense than a dog just walking by and doing nothing, so it's going to really stick into the mind. So our brains also have a bit of a negative bias. If people are worrying that something's going to go wrong, or, oh, everyone always makes fun of me, no one respects me, those are much easier beliefs to gain evidence for because, if you walk around through a big city and you walk by 20,000 people in a day, you're going to forget, 19,985, but maybe remember the one person who looked at you funny or bumped into you or who insulted you. Unfortunately, like today, I was in a train and one person was smoking. It was gross. That's the only person I remember from that train car out of like 100. So that's just how our brains work. So that is really big to be aware of. Those are two absolutely most crucial principles of silly ideas spreading, which is repetition and perception. Once a belief has been implanted or even heard a few times, our brain's going to try to confirm it. So what is a way to use that to our advantage is to start by consciously putting in good beliefs and good perceptions. You hear people saying things like, you need to be logical. Logic is good, but our brains are also emotional. So if you want to say feel confident or have a positive belief or have reasons why you believe you can succeed, you want to start out with emotion. You can do it with repetition. Start out with a statement that doesn't have any logic, like this is going to work. I can do it. Today's going to be a good day. And you could simply repeat it even if you don't believe it or write it down with affirmations, and your brain will start to perceive it as true or at least somewhat true, which is amazing how simple that is. We can just consciously decide on positive, useful beliefs or perceptions to have and repeat them to ourselves, whether it's written or in our mind. Written is particularly powerful, and implant those beliefs, and then our perceptions will take care of pulling in useful information to either back up those beliefs or to make those beliefs true for us, which is very good if it's the right beliefs, like I'm going to succeed, or I'm going to close a deal this month or this week, or I'm going to make money, or I'm going to get a promotion soon, all sorts of good